Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. July 20th edition. This is go back, Joseph. This is a red letter day for me. 51 years ago, it was obviously the moon landing, but exactly 1 year ago, I had my third granddaughter.
That's awesome.
So we had, of course, I call her Luna, and my kids have thought I'd lost it, but they thought I lost it a long time ago. Hey, John Winnick, CEO, Clark Street Capital out of Chicago. John, I love having you come on. You have great insights. Your expertise is a little bit different than the average lender. Tell us what you do.
So I own a company, a small business, started in October 2008. We sell loan portfolios for banks and private equity firms. Last year, the majority of our business was good loans, and it's selling 80% of the loans at par or better. This year, it's going to be the opposite as we sort of move into a distress cycle.
John, are you still on the board of a CDC?
I chair the board of SummerCore in Chicago.
So you're involved. How much are you involved in the 504 secondary market?
I'm very involved, sure.
Okay. So if you have a 504 loan and you have that first third-party loan and you're interested in selling it, give John a call. And John, I have to ask you. In fact, we probably should have done it as a poll question. How many trips have you made since COVID in March?
If we're counting each way, I made a total of 8 flights. Well, technically 7 flights, and I drove back once. So.
Well, you have 8 more than me. I know you have 8 more than Katie. Lance, how many do you have?
He's got 8 more than me.
John, you are definitely the outlier. Well, let's all be safe, and John, you be safe. Hey, this is as the grandparent. I want to know: does a potential school closure impact you? And one of the reasons I asked this question, Lance, is in talking to my kids. Both of them, they're working out of the house. Well, look at that, pretty well, substantially 22. Go ahead, Lance.
Oh, I was just thinking one part of the education system that's going to be interesting that will be incredibly impactful on the economy if it occurs is what happens to college football. If they're, I realize we're talking about elementary, junior high, middle school kids here, but what happens if college football has no fans in the stands?
So
all those communities.
So 40% of our audience is worried about educating their kids out of the house, and you're worried about a cold beer in front of a TV on a Saturday. I don't know, Lance.
Actually, that's not it, Bob. I spent a lot of my life in Fayetteville, Arkansas, home of University of Arkansas. In typical football game, there's 75,000 people that come into that community. What if those 75,000 people are not coming in and renting or getting hotel rooms, eating at restaurants, buying stuff at retail shops?
All right.
I'm anxious to see what happens.
I apologize. No, but you're right. There's a lot, baseball. I mean, this is all impact on the negative impact on small business with what we're going through is ridiculous. I was going to say ridiculous. It's difficult. And now we're going through a second round of closures. Hey, just out of curiosity, you're taking a more substantial role in social media. Katie, what do you think the answer to this is going to be?
That actually surprises me a little bit. I would say I've definitely been checking social media more since all of this happened, just to kind of find out what's closed, what's open, what's going on. And also just a lot of businesses have gone to online programs, so I would think more people would be using it, but it could just be our audience.
Yeah. Yes, 26% no is 74%. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, my social media activity is higher, especially on LinkedIn. LinkedIn can be a good source of news and information, and So my activity on LinkedIn has been at a high level during this crisis.
From my marketing reach, I encourage you to follow the axiom, which is there are riches in niches. LinkedIn has every possible group you could think of, and you could go in there and try to become an expert in that. You don't want to overly advertise what you do, but there's every group under the sun. Lance, how many groups are you involved with, Lance?
I'm not even sure anymore, Bob. Mostly banking, small business, entrepreneurship groups, but I haven't paid attention recently, Bob, but a number.
John, my philosophy on that is Facebook and Instagram. Those are hobbies. Those are pictures of the grandkids, pictures of future weddings. LinkedIn is more of a professional networking.
Yeah, I'm on a 30-day digital fast, so I'm seeing how I can without
a digital ban. Now that would have been interesting. Finally, do you think Treasury Secretary Mnuchin will enact blanket forgiveness for PPP loans under 150? Why are we asking this?
Hey, Bob.
So last Friday, there was a hearing in the House Small Business Committee, and it really primarily focused on some key forgiveness opportunities. And one of the things that was brought up multiple times really was this blanket forgiveness concept. And the Treasury Secretary said that he is really considering, especially for small loans, he did not indicate what small loan meant. That might be under 150, which is what a lot of people suspect. That they want to just give blanket forgiveness and not look into it too much in depth. Also, during that hearing, the administrator for the SBA said that they are hoping to have a forgiveness portal open by the beginning of August.
So Lance and I were only off by 30 days.
Hey, Bob, one of the things, if you wanted 100% response on that, you could have had a fourth category. I really, really hope so.
John, were you involved in this PPP program? Are you involved in buying those for servicing? What is your institution or your company's involvement?
Well, I think we are involved in a couple sales of PPP loan portfolios. I mean, everyone keeps waiting for the forgiveness rules to come out. A lot of banks are sitting on these applications and have nowhere to put them. So, obviously, the longer this drags out towards the summer, the more banks are saying, or institutions are saying, that we want to deal with the hassle of all this forgiveness.
Katie, real quick, anything else did you want to mention from the hearing on Friday? Or, I mean, it is what it is, correct?
I will be looking more into it. I've only got the highlights right now, but I will probably be writing about that tomorrow if I can get a full video of that.
Well, August 30th, that's the first I've heard of that. So that's awesome if we can get that done by then. John, I understand we got some slides from you. What's going on?
Sure. Well, I just want to talk a little bit about kind of where we are with the problem asset cycle. Last week, we had the earnings for the 4 largest banks and a few others. I'd like to give you a little bit color on the deferrals and where deferrals stand, where you're seeing some improvement, where things are still unclear, and then touch on a little bit of the small business lending. If we go to the next slide, I've shown this graph before, I think in a prior webinar, but the gist of this is if this looks like 2008, you're going to see a 3 to 10-fold increase in workout assets at banks, which is going to require either additional workout resources or a better idea is to hire Clark Street to sell your problem loans. So that's something you can look at as well. Next slide.
John, while we're waiting for the next slide, we always ask the question, what do you think your default rates are going to look like in 2021, 2020? Obviously, we have the forgiveness, so that skews the numbers. What do you see as a default rate for SBA? And you can incorporate both 7A and 504 SBA lending. What do you see as?
Sure. And I don't want to sound like the Grim Reaper, but I think it's becoming apparently clear that the small business loans in this cycle are like the subprime residential mortgages in the last cycle. They appear to have the highest level of defaults throughout any other asset class. Good segue into our slide on bank earnings. Let's take Chase, for example. Most banks provided some disclosure as far as their deferrals. I guess on the good news side, you could see that the deferral requests generally bottomed out in the second quarter. And actually net deferrals are going down. You have more customers that are coming off of deferrals than they are adding at this point, which is good. And, they really grinded to a halt in June. Chase provided some disclosure on deferrals. You could see on the consumer side, auto was the worst, home lending 6.9%, business cards 4%, consumer cards 2.1%. Point being is these are essentially potential future workout assets, and some percentage of this deferral universe is going to become a problem. If you go on to the next slide.
John, is there a reason why you didn't put student lending or student loans in that analysis?
Again, the disclosure was not consistent. Banks are not required to disclose their deferrals because technically they're not TDRs. They're likely future TDRs, but they don't have to provide that disclosure. Of the four major banks, Bank of America and Wells were pretty good. Were probably the best. Chase was okay. Citibank provided almost no disclosure on their deferrals. So it was embarrassing.
Thank you.
If you go to the next slide, I thought these comments from the earnings releases were pretty effective. Next slide.
I think, Michael, are we having issues with Joseph?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So this was just some comments from the CFO and Jamie Dimon. Point being is we're very early in the credit default cycle. Because of all the stimulus that's going on, you really haven't seen the pain yet. And as Jay said on the call, essentially the moment of truth lies in the months ahead. So the next few months are sort of critical to see where we are from a delinquency standpoint. I would argue that we're entering a period of negative stimulus where, with PPP money being exhausted, most of that's been already used, deferral periods ending, unemployment insurance potentially going back to what it normally is. We're going to have this period of negative stimulus, which is going to be challenging for the economy.
John, the president of General Motors was quoted as saying that, we're going to have a recession, but 2021, we're going to come back like gangbusters, and will be any recession we will be out of. Do you agree with her analysis?
I think it just depends on where we stand with the vaccine or a cure. There's an article in the New York Times over the weekend about a large percentage of people, even if there is a vaccine, are not going to take it, or have already said they're not going to take it. So, hopefully there's a vaccine soon, and hopefully there's enough confidence amongst the American people to take said vaccine. So, fully 100% of people can enter the economy again.
Yeah, well, put me down as I am a pro-vax person, and I will do it. I'm not going to ask you guys to commit on that, but I'm definitely going to do it if they have one. What do you got on this slide?
Yeah, so Wells Fargo provided some good color on non-accruals by property type in their CRE book. I mean, I think this is pretty good. You could see shopping centers were the highest. Non-shopping center retail was 14% of the loans were non-accrual. Hotel, motel, 14%. Office buildings, 13%. Apartments seem to be holding up pretty well. Industrial warehouse, pretty well. Keep in mind that some of this data is a little difficult to understand because many of these loans are in some sort of deferral. So they're very likely not to be non-accrual loans. So we won't really get a picture of the credit picture until later in the year. But this gives you an idea of kind of where Wells stands. And Wells is the largest CRE lender in the country.
Do you see the new normal being more people working at home? You and I both agree that people are fleeing. What we loved about inner city 4 years ago was everything was there. Now people are fleeing and they're going rural. as long as we have good internet. Do you see that?
The work at home trend? I think, look, there's a couple things that are true. I think you cannot argue that an awful lot of people like working from home. I think that has been pretty well documented. What I'm unclear on, and I am a skeptic on, is whether management teams are effective when people are working from home. And I have a sense that banks, for example, the folks that I cover, are having a really difficult time making decisions because everyone's working remotely. So I don't think working from home is a panacea. I do think there is value to being co-located and stopping by the CFO's office or the treasurer and so on and getting their opinion. Remember when I had my first job at GE, if you were a smoker and you attended the smoking breaks of the CFO, you could get an awful lot accomplished. So now there is some value to being co-located.
John, I tell this story. Katie's been with us for a year now as our editor. I've only met Katie once, and that was back in Washington, D.C. for our event. And so Katie, how's it been with you working at home and not in an office?
I did the office thing a couple years back, and I think this is honestly a little bit easier on me because I can I have all my work in front of me. I don't have to worry about, I left that in the office. I don't know. It's been very easy for me.
The other advantage is Katie is leaving Southern California and moving to Seattle in a couple weeks, and she already has a job lined up with us, obviously.
Yeah, I can keep it and go anywhere with it.
The work from home thing does have some important implications for restaurants. What I'm noticing is downtown Chicago right now, probably 1 in 10 of the restaurants are open. The neighborhood restaurants are doing quite well because people are staying from home and they're ordering from their local restaurant as opposed to taking the walk to, Chipotle or something.
What else you got? Let's go to the next slide.
Let's go next one. Bank of America provided some good disclosure. You can see small business in there, but here's their percentage of deferrals by loan type. This is not everything, but you can see small business card, 21% of the balances are in deferral. Small business non-credit card lending was 28%. That's a very high number. And so, we remain deeply concerned about the credit in the SBA portfolio. I think the defaults and delinquencies are going to be staggering. And I think that, quite frankly, a lot of SBA lenders are probably going to get out of the business. Obviously that has some important implications. But,
John, how do these stats compare to 2009?
I think the worst it ever got with mortgages, I think, was in the low 20s. So, again, this is up there with some of the tougher residential portfolios. Having said that, some of these businesses are dentists. You can see on the right slide, small business non-credit lending is the highest country deferrals at 14%, driven by Practice Solutions Group serving dentists, doctors, and veterinarians. And in the second quarter, many of those reopened operations. And so, I think the dentists are doing just fine. All those professional services, vets, and so on, are actually doing quite well because of the ban on elective surgeries has largely been lifted. So, you'll see a lot of improvement there.
Lance, give your quick assessment on these numbers. Is this consistent with what you are seeing with your boots on the ground?
Well, not seeing it in my portfolio, and John, Bob, and Katie, of course, in any SBA portfolio with the CARES Act payments, we're not sure what we have until we come out the other side of CARES Act payments.
Excellent observation.
And I think that, there are going to be areas of significant concern once we come out of the CARES Act payments. Most SBA portfolios are in pretty good shape right now, but the customers are not actually making those payments. So when you get on the other side, what percentage of those people are not able to? And if you're in the heavy end of the hospitality NACE code, there are probably going to be quite a few that come out of those CARES Act payments and are not able to continue making timely payments.
Yeah. You want to go to the next slide? Again, this is Home Bank Shares and Western Alliance. Not shocking, Home Bank Shares, their deferral balances was 27% of all loans. They were pretty aggressive in giving deferrals. There were really two philosophies on deferrals. There was the what I call robo deferrals, where banks just gave deferrals to anyone who asked. And then there were banks that, really were more stingy in giving out deferrals. So what you'll see, the ones that were more aggressive in giving out the deferrals are going to see more improvement because, they gave it to everyone who asked. The ones that were more stingy tended to give them more to the businesses and properties that really needed it. But Western Alliance is big in hospitality, so you could see 90% of hotel bars are participating in the deferment program. That's quite a bit.
John, Home Bank Shares is New England based.
Sorry?
Where are these banks based? Western Alliance.
The Western Alliance is based in headquartered in Phoenix, but they're predominantly California, Nevada, Arizona. Home Bank Shares, I believe, is in Alabama.
Arkansas. It's in Arkansas.
Oh, I don't want to look at this chart. Go ahead, John.
So to answer Lance's question, well, and I chuckle sometimes when people tell me this. They say, well, our portfolio, our delinquencies actually went down this quarter. And I said, well, what happened to the deferral side? Oh, well, now 20% of our loans are in deferment. Well, obviously, if every loan, if a loan becomes troubled and you immediately give the borrower a deferral, then that will have zero impact on your delinquency. But it's obviously something that needs to be noted and be concerned about. What we're seeing in small businesses that's concerning is there's no workout here in a lot of cases. A good number of small businesses appear to be closed permanently. And that's after the PPP program, which was an awful big stimulus and saved an untold thousands number of them. But Yelp has said that 140,000 remain closed as of June 15th. And 41% of the 140,000, so what is that, 60,000 or so, remain shuttered. And you could see shopping, retail, the biggest one, restaurants, beauty and spas. So, yeah, fitness, beauty, and spas are more likely to reopen. Restaurants and retail seem more likely to be permanent. One of my favorite lunch places near me actually has a loan with Summer Corps. They closed their doors for good over the weekend. So, it sort of hits home.
John, I know you had it on a previous slide. I just lost my train of thought. Unfortunately, I know what I want to do. How much of a negative impact are these numbers on the landlords, on the owners of these CREs?
Well, again, there's a sort of a game of musical chairs, right? If the small business owner defers his rent and the landlord defers their loan payment, then obviously there's a period where we can sort of wait for things to get back to normal. And by and large, that's happened. But at some point, the music's going to have to stop. The banks have been given this relief where they don't have to write these loans down or make them TDRs. And that relief expires at 12/31. So at some point, this music is going to stop. I would argue that this is a critical part of capitalism. You cannot save every small business. You're going to make it worse for the remaining small businesses if you try to do that. And you have to give an opportunity for new small businesses to be formed, hopefully under more generous rent terms than what they could get previously.
John, what's going on with the regulators? What is their attitude toward all these deferrals? And
my understanding is they're looking very closely at the second deferral. The first forbearance, no problem. Most banks did them for 90 to 120 days or so. And then now that those loans are coming up now, if those were done in March or April, they're coming up in June and July and August. And now people are looking at those credits more with more scrutiny and getting financial statements, in some cases visiting the property and seeing cash flow projection. Western Alliance Bank is requiring the borrowers to reserve 6 months of payments on their hotel loans, do a cash flow projection. Now the hard work is sort of starting. this last slide is very instructive. October 1st is going to be a very important day for the SBA lending industry because that's the first day we will know which borrowers can make their payments on their own. By November 1st, we'll know who's 30 days delinquent. And, the hard work will really start, then. And obviously, we hope as many businesses can make those payments, but certainly some of them, unfortunately, will not be able to.
Hey, Alicia, and I know we're running late. I apologize, but this is just great stuff. Alicia asked the question, will the new contemplated relief include further coverage of 7A and SBA 504 payments? In other words, this is for the panel, do we see under any circumstance that October 1st date being extended?
I've not heard a word about it being extended. I think would be some support for that, but I've not heard a single mention, and Katie, you might chime in there because I just have not heard anything.
Right.
Yeah, John, have you?
Yeah, I asked the question prior to our call. I didn't get an answer that was definitive or not. The reality is that the government making principal payments on loans is pretty unprecedented. Forgiveness on interest is one thing.
Payments for loans for Main Street.
Correct. Correct. But if you look at the bailouts so far, the only large companies that have gotten bailouts really have been the airlines. The Main Street lending program appears to be a dud from the Fed. No one seems to want that program. So, at some point, with $4 trillion in debt being added on the last 90 days or so, the music's going to have to stop at some point.
Yeah, very good. Let's see, Raman, I'm going to hold off on your question. The question is, did the P4 debate today go well? The next step, we don't know, other than it's still a bipartisan effort. So as the week goes on, we will address that. Speaking of the dud Main Street lending program, thank you very much for that introduction, John. Lance is going to be talking about it on our webinar Wednesday. Real quick, Lance, give us an update and then we'll sign off.
Well, we're going to try to cover Main Street PPP changes that have occurred and things you need to know to be an effective participant lender in those programs.
Yeah, and we're also going to do an update on PPP and what we know on that. Hopefully we'll have more information on that August 30th guideline. Hey, I appreciate the panel. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Talk to you tomorrow. Thanks.
Have a good day.